Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the first ever virtual DOE Office of Indian Energy Program Review. Next slide, please. Okay, so by way of introduction, for those who I have not met yet, my name is Luiseño Pierce. I've been doing energy development for about the last 25 plus years, and have had the pleasure and the privilege of working with Indian tribes and many Alaska Native villages with their energy development for over 20 years. I'm a mechanical engineer by degree. I did pursue an MBA. In my current position as deployment supervisor, I support the office by executing the deployment program, and that is comprised of financial assistance through competitive grants, technical assistance offered at no charge to tribes and eligible tribal entities, and outreach and education. So additionally, I manage the National Funding Opportunity announcements and act as a project officer for some of the resultant grants and agreements. We also implement outreach through our website, our email letters, and oversee sort of the National Laboratory Partner Support. I did want to call out, because I don't have a good picture, but James Jensen is the second from the left in that bottom picture, and Tommy is the second from the right. But James is going to be helping us moderate the Q&As at the end of the session. So that picture was actually taken at Seminole's third annual Renewable Energy and Sustainability Conference in February of this year. And then I know that Tommy and a few others from our team went to rest. And I'm pretty sure right when you guys got back in March, we went on semi-permanent telework, and we've been on telework ever since. Next slide, please. So next I want to introduce the newest member of the federal team, Dr. Tommy Jones. And Tommy Jones from Jones, Oklahoma. And I always say that twice because I think it's hilarious. Tommy Jones from Jones, Oklahoma. So Tommy is a enrolled citizen of Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, Naknek Village Council, and a native shareholder of Bristol Bay Native Corporation of Alaska. Tommy joined the office as an intern while he was finishing his PhD in natural resource studies, and his dissertation, which actually analyzed the barriers to renewable energy development on tribal lands. While he was an intern, him and Len Estifer, another one of the interns, jointly published a paper on some of those barriers, and that's on the Office of Indian Energy website. Since then, he supported the office in Golden, Colorado as a contractor, and not even a month ago, joined us as a federal employee. So we're glad to have him, to keep him, and he'll be helping us stay on time, and will provide presenters a 5-minute warning, 15 minutes into your presentation. And Tommy, you want to just say a few words, if you will?
Hello, everyone, and thank you again for joining today. We've had a good week already, and we have a lot of presentations left today and tomorrow. And feel free to submit any questions that you have during the presentations so that we can get those answered. And looking forward to continuing this progress. We do enjoy this week. Typically every year it's in person, and so for those of you who haven't attended, we usually do this in person, and it's a great networking event and ways to talk to other folks about, maybe a project that you could do in the future. But again, thank you everyone for coming.
Great. Next slide, please. So next, I'd like to introduce Ms. Tweety Doe. She's another member of our team. She's duty stationed in Golden, Colorado. She's a project officer for many of the projects we'll hear about this week and have heard about. As a project officer, Tweety Doe, yes, Doe, D-O-E, it was just destined to be that she works for DOE. She administers financial assistance awards to Indian tribes, Alaska Native villages, tribal and intertribal organizations. And before joining the Office of Indian Energy, Tweety served for 8 years with DOE's Office of Energy Efficiency Renewable Energy, coming on board during the Recovery Act for the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant Program. and then later as a project management analyst with EERE's Project Management Coordination Office. Before joining DOE, which is where I first met Tweety, she had worked for the Council of Energy Resource Tribes, where she had gained valuable experience working with tribal leaders on energy and resource planning and management, and the understanding that tribal communities have diverse needs, resources, and visions. And I had the privilege of knowing the late David Lester as well as many that are presenting today and others. But one of the things that I remember most and carry with me since then, many years ago, was that if you've met one tribe, you've met one tribe. And it's really true, and you'll see that throughout the PowerPoint presentations. There sometimes is some commonality, but each tribe is unique. And a lot of the projects sort of, are unique to that tribe, to that village. Ms. Doe has a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science at the University of Washington and a Master's of Art in International Studies with an emphasis on economics and human rights from the University of Denver. She obtained her Project Management Professional PMP certification in 2013, and she's also a Certified Project Officer and a Certified Contracting Officer representative. Tweety will be helping moderate some of the sessions, so you'll hear from her in just a few minutes. I'm going to go to the next slide. And also, before we begin, I wanted to give folks a little bit of a sense of the Office of Indian Energy and the rest of our team. So the Office of Indian Energy currently has 9 federal employees, which I have to highlight because I think it's important. That's more than twice as many as the 4 federal employees we had last November during the program review. So the 9 employees currently, there's 4 in DC, 3 in Colorado, and 2 in Alaska. We also have contractor support, a couple folks at headquarters, and 6 contract support for the National Financial Assistance grants and agreements across the nation. They help us here. Tweety, Tommy, and I, who are all 3 located in Colorado. We're actually co-located with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory when we're in the office. We have not been since March. So we also get some support from DOE's Golden Field office here as well, from procurement, legal, and NEPA support. Next slide, please. So this is a picture which we took at last November's program review. Obviously, some of our folks are not in this picture, but let me go through this just so you can put some faces to names since we can't do this in person. So in the back row, we're starting with James Johnson. Next to him is Chris Venema, both contractors supporting the deployment program from Colorado. Next is Gibby Kokonowski, the federal staff member duty stationed in Anchorage, Alaska. Next to Gibby is Director Kevin R. Frost, who's located in Washington, D.C. In the front row, we have Jamie Alley on the far left, myself, Jen Luna, who's the team lead for the contractor staff in Colorado. Next to Jen is Tweety Doe, as I said, DOE project officer. Next to Tweety is Susan Manley. She's also a contract support and project monitor for some of your grants and agreements. Next to Susan is Jasmine Anderson. She supports Director Frost in DC. And on the very far right is Tommy Jones. So as this team picture was taken last November, it does not include those who have joined us since. So let me give you a little bit of update on that. Since last November, Gibby Kokonowski has taken the Senior Policy Advisor position. He remains duty stationed in Alaska. Gibby was recently joined by Alan Verbitsky. He's not shown in the picture, but Alan is an engineer. He has a wealth and tons of experience on the whole portfolio of energy systems and technologies. And since he joined the office, he's really returning home to Alaska. So good to have him on board. Brant Petrasic, also not shown, previously of DOE's Office of Environmental Management, with a history of working with tribes, joined us as a senior advisor, duty station in Washington, D.C. Director Frosh, shown in the back row, second from the right, has also been joined in D.C. by Gwendella Wilson, our project budget officer, and Paulette Toole, our new management analyst. Neither are shown. And a very recent addition, as I said, to the office, not even a month ago, I think November 22nd, Dr. Tommy Jones joined us as a federal staff member. And on the contractor side, not shown, is Jessica Becker, who joined the deployment contractor team in Colorado as project monitor and is supporting some of the grants and agreements you'll hear about this week. Next slide, please. Before we jump into the project presentation, let's go over a few event details. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available on DOE's Office of Indian Energy website in a couple of weeks. Copies of the presentation slides will be posted to the website as well shortly. Everyone will receive a post-event email with the link to the page where the slides and recordings will be located. Because we are recording this webinar, all phones have been muted. We will answer your written questions at the end of the final presentation of this session. You can submit a question at any time by clicking on the question button located in the webinar control box on your screen and typing in your question. For the presenters, please ensure you're muted when you're not presenting, and be aware that because we are on a tight time frame, we will be providing you a 5-minute verbal warning 15 minutes into your presentation. So please plan accordingly. And we will take questions at the end of the third presentation. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Tweety Doe, to provide an introduction to the project presentations. Tweety, it's all yours.
Thank you, Lizana. And I'll just have to say quickly that I've been stalking Lizana for the past 15, 16, 17 years. I'm not sure. I've lost count of that too. But it's paid off because I get to work with her and learn so much from her, and get to work with an amazingly dedicated team, the feds as well as the contractors from our office. And I get to work with you to help you realize your projects and the tribal vision, very unique visions to each tribe. Okay, so I'll jump in here. Welcome everyone to day 3, session 7 of our virtual program review. And as smooth as this virtual format has been, I hope we will safely see you all in person next year. If you have attended our annual program review in person or virtually the past 2 days, you have heard us explain the purpose of our annual program review. It is to hear from our grant recipients, report on their projects. As a requirement of accepting a grant from our office, the presenters provide updates and share the lessons they have learned with all of us. And in normal times, our program review also provide a wonderful occasion for dialogue and networking. In this virtual format, we invite you to listen and think about maybe one thing that stands out and ask questions for our presenters using the chat function that Lizana mentioned. In the past 2 days, in 6 sessions, we heard from 18 grant recipients on their projects ranging from energy efficiency measures, residential to utility scale solar PV, biomass, wind, water, to battery storage and microgrid systems across diverse tribal lands. For this session, session 7, we will hear from San Pasqual, Ho-Chunk, and Pechanga. And following their talks, we will respond to your comments and questions. All right, so first we will hear from Josh Simmons about the San Pasqual Band of Mission Indians microgrid project. Josh, ready?
Yes, thank you, Tweety. Your timing is impeccable. You guys are right at 10:45, so good work. So I'm Josh Simmons, today representing the San Pasqual Band of Mission Indians. I'm filling in for John Flores, the environmental director and the person leading the project on behalf of the tribe. So John is actually on a late paternity leave. Him and I had our second child born on the same day back on June 3rd, and he had to kind of delay his paternity leave until now. But so John and I have some similarities. I think our birthday is only a few days apart too. So I've been working with the Pasqual as the lead project consultant, kind of from the beginning of this project. We support them on other energy initiatives as well, and I may touch upon those a bit more. And then I'm separately doing a presentation as the lead, as technical contact on behalf of Rincon tomorrow for another microgrid project. Next slide, please. So John will be able to better speak to some of the general information, but the San Pasqual Reservation was established in 1910, and it's a little over 3,000 acres. San Pasqual has 280 tribal members and over 1,400 lineal descendants. The population on the reservation is 1,600. They have approximately 450 homes. 83 of those have solar, and an increasing number are going to have storage to be paired with their solar, and that's a separate initiative I've been working with San Pasqual on. So here's a map of the reservation that shows the fee and trust lands. As you can see, it's a bit of a checkerboard, and I know separately they've been working on virtual net metering for a community solar project that's been a little more complicated due to the checkerboard pattern on here as well. Next slide, please. So this graphic is, shows one of the motivations of this particular project. So in the light green, you can see the San Pasqual lands, and then some overlays of I don't know the most recent fires, I think, but some fires that encroached and even directly impacted the San Pasqual community. So what we're experiencing. Well, next slide, please. So the fires and them actually occurring on tribal lands is one of many impacts. Although with the microgrid, I mean, if the fires actually made it to the reservation, then I'm not sure that people are going to be staying on the reservation to utilize a microgrid system. However, wildfires that are occurring in the area and the threat of wildfires are leading to planned power outages. So in California, they have public safety power shutoff events, and San Pasqual is in a rural area that is prone to wildfires, and the circuits that are on are experiencing these on an increasing frequency and extended periods of time. So they're now finding they can be out for a day or more, at least almost like once a year now, but now it's happening, I think, multiple times this year. I think they had a few days just I think the past week or the week before that as well. So that's one threat to their community. Severe weather, which also seems to be happening more frequently as well. It seems like there's less storms that are happening with greater intensity. I separately worked with them recently on securing some disaster mitigation funding for some mudslides they experienced due to a storm. I think that happened in January 2017 or 18 as well. The high winds are tied to the wildfires, and being in California, earthquakes are an ongoing threat as well. And then in addition to that, there might be localized damage to a utility system, such as somebody crashing into a pole or outages due to SDG&E system upgrades. So those are impacting the San Pasqual community and in a variety of ways. In particular for this project, the tribe has the inability to use its facilities. They're losing productivity and revenues, and the equipment is getting damaged. But I guess coming back to the inability to use facilities, so there's the primary use of government facilities, and then there's the secondary use of government facilities or an alternative use during emergency situations, which we'll get into more detail. But if they don't have power, then they can't use it for either the primary or secondary usage. So the main driver for this project was resilience, being able to keep the lights on, keep the power on during outages, stay operational, continue to provide services to the community and emergency services as needed. Shortly behind that, in terms of priorities, is reducing electricity costs. The SDG&E has among the highest electricity costs in California, and so any way that the tribe can reduce those and offset those electricity costs, they're going to seek to do so. In addition, the tribe is seeking to move toward 100% renewables and reduce air emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, and other environmental impacts. Next slide, please. So the facilities that this microgrid is covering include the Tribal Administration Building, which is a certified Red Cross evacuation center. So it's serving as an emergency public shelter. It's also the tribe's command and control center, and will also include first aid services during an outage. And you know, the critical loads on these are listed to the right, but you can imagine what they're going to be. But you know, primarily being in well, so just to kind of put this in a proper location, this is Northeast San Diego County in California, and it gets hot there in the winter time, sorry, in the summertime. It can get relatively chilly, but in the summertime in particular, you need HVAC with, you have temperatures exceeding 100 degrees on a fairly regular basis. So making sure there's HVAC, making sure that you know, there's a facility of people to go to that are going to be comfortable, and then having the associated infrastructure, telecommunications, information technology services available, in addition to food storage and food services. Next to the Tribal Administration Building is the Housing and Security Building, which includes their public safety department and houses where they do their monitoring there. So they have cameras throughout the reservation where they monitor to be able to understand what's going on in the reservation and then outside the reservation, which can be particularly important during a wildfire event, to be able to monitor the surrounding areas and see what's happening with those wildfires. The fire department is, you know, just a little bit south on the same campus, and you know, they have, in addition to their, you know, their first response for residential and you know, on the reservation, they also serve as a 911 emergency dispatcher. There's the education building, which is, and the preschool buildings, which are separate buildings but close by one another at I think the furthest south or east of the campus. And those are going to serve as an emergency public shelter for those with children. And finally, there's a wastewater treatment plant serving the entire complex. And so, next slide, please. All right, so the proposed components for this microgrid are a solar PV photovoltaic system, approximately 157 kilowatts of new solar, and that's going to be, it's also going to integrate 24 kilowatts of existing solar that was installed by Grid Alternatives a few years ago, serving the education building. So there'll be a combined, you know, almost 200 kilowatts DC of solar available for the entire tribal government complex. These are being tied with battery energy storage systems, so lithium ion in particular, and 4-hour batteries, size for a peak load of 120 kW, which you know, mostly addresses their peak demand as well. And in addition to providing the backup power, it also, when the system is grid connected, which this is a grid tied microgrid, it's also going to provide energy cost savings through energy arbitrage, or buying, you know, buying power at low prices and storing it and deploying that during the peak price periods, and also through offsetting demand charges or demand charge reduction. And so those are all tied together. Well, these, I guess all the things are tied together, microgrid controls. The propane generators are really redundant. So the solar PV and battery systems are providing an ongoing economic benefit, in addition to ongoing backup power. So if normally if the power goes out and a solar PV system does not have batteries or proper controls, then it's going to shut down and it won't come back on until the power goes on. In this circumstance, because of the battery system and the controls, the solar will turn on, and to a certain extent, subject to the amount of sun available and the amount of power in the battery, the system can operate indefinitely without the generators, you know, subject to whatever the load is in that capacity. The propane generators are to fill in the gaps if there is a greater load need, but also for redundancy. So if for some reason the solar and/or batteries are not available, they have propane generator size to carry the full load of all of the facilities on the campus through these outages. And as I mentioned, they're tied together using microgrid control system, which is, you know, primarily software based, but all these things these were all on separate meters and are being rewired to a single meter. And there's a certain amount of energy management controls and measures that are being implemented focused around HVAC and lighting. Next slide, please. So here's the, one of the earlier conceptual designs. The, kind of final engineering design drawings are, I believe, out there somewhere. But I think this is probably a little bit easier to understand the project. The lines in the project, in terms of connecting all of the loads and the distributed energy resources, including the generators, batteries, and solar, are not entirely accurate, but close enough. So as I mentioned, there are 8 meters that are now being integrated. The existing solar you can see is kind of more in the bottom middle of the screen on top of the education building. The new solar is going in the parking lot to the north, and that was really the only place that could support the new solar. The rooftops were not deemed to be suitable for that. And so that is, as I mentioned, all these. So then the storage system is going to be to the south of the. So we see number 3 on there. That's the housing and security building. That's where the storage and the generator are going to be installed. There's 2, which you can see. Look, there are propane tanks on here to the bottom left side of the screen. The one in surrounded in a blue box is a new propane tank. So they have an existing propane tank that is used at the tribal hall for cooking and other purposes there. And so just to ensure that there is sufficient propane supply for the backup generators, an additional supply, an additional tank is being added. So as I mentioned, these are going to be fully integrated so that the microgrid control system is going to be able to direct the solar, the storage, and all the resources that are connected in the way that makes the most sense, both in grid connected and in island mode. And they'll, instead of being 8 different distinct meters or 8 separate microgrids, it's be a fully integrated microgrid with a single point of interconnection that I don't know is going to. I think it's actually going to occur a bit further to the east as well. Next slide, please. So the benefits of this project are economically, it's going to offset 100%, 108% of electricity that this complex, all these facilities are pulling from the SDG&E grid, and offset just about 100% of the SDG&E electricity costs. With solar, there's some degradation over time. The system was sized as high as it could be for allow for interconnection. I think the limit is somewhere around 105, 110% to allow for some future growth as well. And then the panels degrade over time, so the actual output of those solar panels is going to decrease slightly over time. And as I mentioned, this is really primarily providing not just backup power, but redundant backup power to ensure that the community has these facilities, these services available to them when they need them most. Next slide, please. The project team consists of a variety of groups internal to San Pasqual. The team is being led by John Flores, the environmental director and water manager. Dave Martinez is their public works director, who they do a variety of public works projects throughout the reservation. His involvement, his insights, his experience in this realm has been invaluable in terms of providing on-the-ground support for this and working with the contractor, ensuring that things are done well to meet the tribe's needs. Desiree Morales is part of the environmental department as well, and works under John Flores, and she in John's stead is when he's out, she's kind of leading the project as well. She's their utilities manager. So we are serving, the Prosper Sustainably serving as the lead owner's representative, lead consultant, and our team includes Michael Burr from the Microgrid Institute and Dustin Jolly from Sage Renewables, and actually R Energy, I think is his other firm that he heads as well. So Michael, has been supporting me on a variety of microgrid related projects, grant proposals, and then in project implementation on behalf of owners in terms of project management through procurement, through installation. And he has a wealth of experience on microgrids. Dustin is an engineer that they do modeling and engineering and construction type support, and they're doing that remotely. They're not doing it necessarily on the ground. We've all been out to the site. multiple times. And Dustin actually formerly was an engineer for the Yurok tribe for, I believe, a year or two, a few
Pardon
years
the
ago.
interruption. You have 5 minutes remaining.
Great, thank you. So the design build contractor selected for this project was Green Realities, who is led by Ralph Ciarlanti, and his team includes Gridscape Solutions, led by Vipul Gore, who is providing the battery and microgrid control solution, and then they are being supported by Energy Solutions, who are doing project management on behalf of Green Realities and the full team. And finally, S-Scale Corporation is doing code compliance on behalf of the tribe. So the requirement is that this project the tribe doesn't have its own, independent building codes, and they do have some building codes that are consistent with California, and S-Scale is essentially ensuring that there is compliance with California codes on behalf of the tribe. Next slide, please. So the Green Realities has been selected. The project is underway. The SDG application for three-phase service interconnection has been submitted and is in process right now. The design engineering is complete. I think that there's still actually some maybe final tweaks that are being worked on right now. They are in the process of, they're doing some trenching. They have the solar structure up that I think they are going to begin to connect the panels relatively soon. They're working on the west side of the campus for the Tribal Government Center around that, around the tribal admin and housing buildings first, and then they'll start making their way to the east down past the fire station to the education buildings and wastewater treatment plant. It's estimated that construction will be completed in the first quarter of next year, but we'll continue to monitor that and make adjustments as needed. Next slide, please. So lessons learned, procurement and contracting takes time, but it's important to spend the time doing this, ensuring that you are understanding and communicating and including your requirements in the procurement and contracting processes. Because if you don't spend the time doing this, then you're going to end up, kind of your project will be more driven and led by whoever you hire to do it. So you want to spend the time to, at least we found it was worthwhile spending the time to ensure that we're very clear on what the tribe wanted, and ensuring that was included in the contracting mechanism. Utility approvals for us, and I think consistently, mostly for everybody, particularly in California, take time. And it's good to get that process going, the interconnection. If you have to get some upgrades, such as three-phase, you want to get that rolling. It's good to continue to look for opportunities to leverage funding. The tribe was able to secure some additional funding through Grid Alternatives via a Wells Fargo grant as well to offset some of the cost share, which was fortunate. And they didn't necessarily know that coming in. So sometimes it can be an opportunity to leverage funding to offset some of your match. Sometimes it can be an opportunity to leverage funding to expand the system size. And we have batteries being installed at other government facilities as well. And if they're closer, we may have tied to those to the microgrid as well. Maybe that'll have at some point in the future. We did have to go through some budget changes. You make your best guess in the beginning of the project, and then things change along the way. And it can be a bit of a process. We've been navigating it, and we're fortunate to be working with Tweety and others to support us in getting through all that. Encourage any tribe to seek performance guarantees. They're a little more complicated when you get into a microgrid system, but your solar, you can seek performance guarantees for how much solar is being produced. You may also want to seek performance guarantees for how the batteries operate, and then the uptime of the system, particularly in its ability to keep the facility running during outages. Regular strategic communications are critical to ensure that everybody's on the same page and that concerns are being communicated to the design build contractor in a timely manner and being addressed. And then lastly, it's important to, you're going to go faster by going slow to ensure that you are properly considering everything. If you try to rush things too much, then likely that's when the design build contractor starts to cut corners, or the communications are not happening and the tribe's not getting what they expect. Next slide.
Please finish.
That's it.
Sorry.
Thank you. And that's it. That's it for me. So I think we're waiting for questions at the end. So thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you to the Department of Energy for this opportunity. The ongoing opportunity for tribes and for the opportunity to share this information.
Thank you so much, Josh. You are exactly on time. Great, and thanks for stepping in for John. Next, we will hear about Ho-Chung's net metering expansion on the Winnebago Tribe of Nebraska Reservation. Robert, welcome back.
Hi, appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk about this project. We've had a lot of fun with it. Next slide, please. Okay, just some background. HCI is a development arm of the Winnebago Tribe of Nebraska. They have about 5,000 members, and the reservation is fairly large at 116,000 acres located in northeast Nebraska. Next slide. Ho-Chunk has a governance structure that has a 5-member board. They've been a highly successful economic development engine for the Winnebago Tribe for probably coming up on 20 years, and was very successful in getting the tribe more diversified and away from relying on casino revenue alone. Tremendous expansion and growth in this area. I got involved with them probably a dozen years ago to start to add the renewable energy systems and infrastructure to the portfolio. Next slide, please. We've seen a lot of growth in a lot of areas, including renewable energy, and in Nebraska, where we don't have very good penetration. We have pretty limited net metering laws and utilities that don't really want it. We've done pretty well for ourselves, if we do say so ourselves. Next slide, please. We had to start because Nebraska's energy costs vary, and to many they may seem low. They're probably mid-range nationally. So we grew up in a kind of an economic environment where we had to understand the reality of the regulatory climate and be lean and mean on the economics, because 10, 12 cent power is, you got to really sharpen the pencil to ensure that the economics come back around for you. They had started some years ago with some small SkyStream turbines, and most of those are actually still out there. But we ended up moving into solar about 8 years ago, and have gone to grown it to over 1 megawatt for HCI in the tribe. All in 20, pretty much all of them are in 25 kW and below. We have some 50s, but otherwise we're limited by Nebraska 25 kW limit. So it's a lot of systems, but it's also offsetting power at the retail level, which is where the best economics exist. Next slide, please. We built a team over many years. We have seen some changeover, personnel turnover on the construction side that actually, which is a component of HCI, but there has been a lot of turnover, so a lot of that institutional memory of past deployments has to be refreshed. But on the management side, we've got a long-term team in place that has supported these projects. We definitely try to deploy the KISS the KISS principle, excuse me, as much as possible to keep things simple and to keep those economics lean and mean. When I say keep a low profile, I don't mean avoid the bosses. I mean the incident angle for the solar. We tend to keep them low versus 30 or 40 degrees, because in the severe winds here in the Midwest, it really makes a huge difference on wind shear, whether you're 15 degrees or 30 degrees. So after having picked up panels and stuff over the years from wind, we try to keep that low profile, and then right sizing the system to offset retail in that very limiting net metering climate that we have. Next slide, please. This is the final report on what we call DOE2, which was a second deployment of a Topic 2 community scale solar grant, where we put about 900 solar panels on 9 sites. So it was about 300 kW DC that was installed with the goal of reducing energy $40,000 to $46,000 per year. And this DOE2 also included some sites at the casino where we were allowed by the powers to have 50 kW offset. So some of those you'll see a little bit larger. Next slide, please. Total grant amount was $728 with a 50-50 split on the match, and that was cash match with some in kind, with the installation costs that we undertook. Next slide. You can see the site list here. We'll kind of go through them real quick. The 50s are all over at the casino. We had a 50 kW planned on the Nebraska side, and just was not able to, even though the utility had the legal authority to allow it, they really made it hard on us. So we ended up splitting into 225 kWs instead of 150, even though it was maybe 3% offset of the site consumption. You can sink your teeth into that one. Okay, next slide, please. The Pony Express, we started out with a clean slate here in this field, and started from scratch. And I think we even beat our $2.30 per watt installed cost. I think we were $2.15, maybe $2.20 by the time it was done. It did come up a little bit because it was a significant electrical run to place this out of all the traffic, and we've done half a dozen fuel stations, and we're not impinging on that traffic, and where the snow is going to get piled, and all those are considerations that go into the final placement. Next slide, please. You can see some of this is our Pony, bringing it up. These are Iron Ridge, standard Iron Ridge ground mount systems. We drilled and concreted and laid across, and it came out very nice. The production's doing very well. We did have a pair of panels where a couple of the clips came loose and they actually buckled out, and we're able to go back from underneath and just set them right back in. There was no damage or anything, but a couple of clips did get tightened all the way, and that Nebraska wind found it. Next slide, please. Rosalie is what we call multi-pole mount, MPM system, and it was our first attempt at trying to integrate solar into the human space and make a green space underneath the panels. And I think it came out very well. It was a little bit on the pricier side, which is why we went to redesign the Iron Ridge in the Flandreau project to try to reduce the expense a little bit. But it was pretty stout, and this has worked out well. There's actually 3 strings this is on the north-south spine. So there's 3 strings on here as the sun moves from east to west, and they've all balanced very well together. Next slide, please. This is some more pictures of that. And now, one thing we did learn is the value of bollards. Bollards are steel poles sticking out of the ground so people don't hit things. And once we finished, we installed bollards, but not before the solar array was struck 3 times by semi-trailers backing into them. And even after the bollards were put up, they were still damaged, but at least they took the damage instead of the solar. We were able to make repairs and adjustments and pull things back straight, to stay online. But truckers can be stubborn in their traffic patterns, I guess, is a takeaway. Next slide, please. Accounting is one of the pole mounts that we've done. Whenever we do a pole mount with Schedule 80 8-inch pipe, we have to do them in even numbers because you have to buy a 40-foot stick, and there's two sticks in one whole piece. So we always end up doing these in pairs. This is a great fit for the real estate that we had available. Also looked very well, performing very well. Next slide. You can see the assembly of these down below. Panels are placed on the racking while they're flat and then tipped to the incident angle desired with the panels attached. These incident angles are very easily adjustable if desired, and they perform very well in the wind. These are 110 mile per hour rated. That pipe is 17 feet long down into the ground. It's one of those holes where you look down and you can't see the bottom. Next slide. The Blackhawk Community Center was a large roof. This one took some engineering to do. It was a custom system using some of the racking from OpSun that we had used successfully before. These use special attachment points that are then welded to the membrane roof to prevent leaks. They're attached through the roof to the decking and then sealed. This is the system we ended up having to split because of the various requirements, but it still came out very well. Next slide. In fact, it was designed for 50, we deployed 25 on this roof as we look toward energy storage and next phases of development here. That extra 25 kW capacity in between the installed rows will come in handy. Next slide, please. This was where the other half of that Blackhawk Center panels went onto a very conveniently roofed standing seam roof using S5 clamps. That's our favorite system, solar ready roof, $2 a watt or less installed cost. You can't beat it. Next slide, please. This was the casino and hotel. There were twin 50s that were put on over here at the casino, and very cost effective, very effective. You can see the economics at the end. They deployed very quickly and safely. Though toward the end, it was an ice covered metal roof, which I don't recommend. Next slide, please. This is the deployment on the entertainment structure roof, as you can see, a lot of panels. Next slide, please. We utilized some pole mounts in a challenging area of the casino. We had, because of low usage, rates were very high on the meter and very limited real estate. So the pole mounts came in very handy to enable us to install capacity on a very limited area, located close to the transformer. Next slide. The RV park was basically 4 of these. We put 6 up all together, and they went up very well. They're performing very well. Next slide. The training center was another Iron Ridge ground mount. We've got quite adept at doing these with HCI, and we've learned all kinds of tricks that you can only learn once you do it. Next slide. This is the overall on the casino, the land planning at the casino site. We got a pretty good penetration on the available structures and space without impeding traffic. On the entry causeway, you can see our solar panels that went in here on the pole mount look very good on the entry, and then the other ones are pretty much located behind the main casino and out of the traffic. Next slide. This is kind of just an overview of the costs involved, the various system sizes, the installed cost per watt, how much we look to offset at each site compared to how much is used at each site, different match. Sometimes HCI will have this as an umbrella program where you have different components of the tribe directly involved with their system and the different types of mounts. We always like to use a diverse mounting approach so that we can get the best value, the best use of the land, and the best placement of the panels. All right, next slide, please. This one we just got updated. I appreciate the staff for getting that in under the wire here, but I wanted to capture the actual economics. You know, all the inverters have totalizers, and we know the estimated average value of each site. So it was good to go back and, excuse me.
Pardon the interruption. You have 5 minutes remaining.
Yep, thank you. Seeing this money come back around as intended. Now our goal was 47, and we got 49,000. And I wish I could say that I had discovered a source of free energy. In this case, it was actually over a year of recording. Like for some of these systems that came on very early, they might have 15 months of monitoring. So it put us over in the first year, we had some early systems that put us over here. But I think the point is that we're tracking to meet the annual savings goals that we had set out to accomplish. Next slide. Lots of challenges. We had some property lines that nobody seemed to know until after the job was over. Winter weather is always a challenge, having to work under those kinds of conditions. And then, like I mentioned with the Blackhawk, they were going to require us to go all the way back to the transformer with the other 25 kW, which was just cost prohibitive to do. Next slide, please. There are future plans, and we're developing those in our mad scientist laboratory as we speak, looking at different things to go forward in the Ho Chunk Village expansion, or looking at more sustainability. We had some ice storms recently that really kind of brought that around to the front, talking about energy sustainability and backup. Next slide, please. Okay, here's our contacts. If you had any further questions, we're always glad to share. And Lance from HCI has always made that very clear. He's glad to share his success stories, but doesn't want to talk about anything else. All right, well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you to DOE for the opportunity to be part of this program, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are.
Thank you so much, Robert. I love the pictures. They show us the work that you are doing, and I like the data also. The last presentation for session 7 will be on Pechanga's first step project on improving energy efficiency and self-sufficiency. Please welcome Peter Pitt and Margie Shaw. You are on.
Hello, Miyu. This is Peter Pitt. It's good to be here. Appreciate the presentations before us and one of our close neighbors to the south and then out there in the Midwest. And to everybody here on the call that we were able to present with before and meet, Tweety and Lizana and Tommy and others. That it feels like we're getting the gang back together right now in this weird time. So definitely appreciate this opportunity, and good to see you all healthy and doing well. So we can start with our presentation here at Pechanga. We're located in Southern California. We're about an hour north of San Diego and an hour and change south of Los Angeles, and we're a bit inland, so we're not along the coast. The Pechanga Band of Luiseño Indians was established, Pechanga Western Electric, and that's the first tribal electric utility in California that I'm the general manager of and have the honor of being. We began service to the tribe's casino government center, and we've increased it to closer to 30 residents now. So we've grown a bit and gained some residential customers, which are an interesting part of our portfolio, and we appreciate having them hooked up, as we are facing PSPS shutdowns, as was brought up earlier. These loads are all now electrically connected to the tribally owned electric infrastructure. Previously, they were Southern California Edison, and one of the unique things about our reservation now is that we still have a good chunk of California Edison customers that are located on the Pechanga reservation. So it's helpful to think about PWE as serving a smaller subset of our residential customers. So it's kind of interesting because within one reservation, you have two utilities serving power, which is not unheard of, but it makes for an interesting kind of dialogue between the two utilities, customers, tribal members. It's an interesting setup that we have. So go ahead and change slides, please. So the residential area, November 2020, Southern Cal Edison, again, serves most of the customers on the reservation. The electrical infrastructure is owned by SCE, and it's a mixture of above ground and underground, three-phase and single-phase power. And we are also experiencing some growth on the reservation, so people building houses, and there's always kind of a question of which utility is the one that's going to serve, so that opens up some interesting dialogue as well. This report provides information necessary to assist tribal staff in making recommendations to membership. Here at Pechanga, the tribal membership has a direct democracy, so many of the larger I don't know exactly how to describe it, but some of the big decision making is done by popular vote by individual tribal members voting in one big group election type of deal. So what we did is we used this opportunity to investigate with tribal staff and consultants to look at, survey, log. Actually, we mapped every pole, every transformer, every span of wire that we could find. We got that all logged into our system to begin an analysis. And based on the limited data available, the annual energy requirements of the target loads are approximately 2 megawatt hours with a non-coincident peak of approximately 500 kW. This would be a relatively small incremental change to PWE's current annual energy usage of approximately 32 megawatt hours and its current peak demand of approximately 15 megawatts. So from just pure power terms, it's not huge, but again, it's a residential customer base which provides different sorts of challenges and opportunities. So we used and produced a survey and valuation of the existing distribution system in the residential area. Ellen toured. It was kind of fun to actually get out there on the ground and look at all of the equipment that's out there, and we did that with our contractors and used our GIS mapping that we had already gathered, and were able to photograph and look at every single piece out there. We also obtained SCE system drawings and reconciled the data to include height, voltages, and feeder sizes. And as a note here to the audience, it is interesting how many variations can be had between records keeping on the Edison side and on the tribal side. That there were things that were close, that weren't close. Generally, it was a 1-for-1, but I will just add that there is variation for what's out there on the ground. So folks that are interested in looking at the utilities that serve their reservation, I think it definitely is a great first step to get out on the ground and just log and map everything that's out there. So through the process, Ellen was able to create spreadsheets with detailed listings of all the overhead and underground assets. We reviewed SCE's previous valuation of similar assets, which SCE provided to the tribe during PWE's initial acquisition of assets from SCE. So when we first were able to acquire assets, we got an idea of valuation for similar assets, and then we're trying to forecast and project those to the rest of the SCE assets. Ellen used the asset sale to create comparable numbers for the SCE assets in the residential area. So this has given us a good ballpark about what we might be looking at in terms of cost for the rest of the residents. Next slide, please. A review of the options for acquiring additional wholesale power resources to serve the residents. That's an interesting question as we're looking at a world of more and more public safety power shutoffs. and kind of uncertainty in your power flow along the wires, being in Southern California in a high fire area similar to our neighbors and relatives to the south. Just in the last couple of weeks, we've experienced, I believe, two PSPSs lasting 24 hours and 23 hours, which during the middle of a pandemic and a stay-at-home order is definitely troubling. So this has increased interest in our efforts to look at how we can maintain power flow throughout these troubling times. So we did a market power study, expansion of the existing 4 megawatt cogen, which we have online right now, and we're coming up on within 10 years of a replacement kind of lifespan. I think we can squeeze a few more years out of it as it's been maintained quite well as not run at max capacity. So we are looking at what it would be like to expand that. On-site large-scale solar. We don't have a ton of land, but we do have parking garages and parking lots and some buildings that we can think through and evaluate. And demand-side efficiency options, of course, evaluations of that and other renewable options. So 5 studies performed, currently being up. Let's see. Market power study. The easiest way to serve load in the residential area would be to slightly increase our market purchases. In the wholesale market, we are in Cal ISO. So that would be a very cost-effective way to serve power to our residents. All California entities buying power from outside their own system must do so from the Cal ISO. We work with them every day, and we bring power in from their grid to serve whatever we don't generate on site. So we could always just increase that. We do generate on site, and we're looking to generate more. We have hydropower from the Boulder Canyon, Hoover federal project, as well as Parker Davis that we import into our system through the CAISO system. We purchase anywhere from 5 to 8 megawatts per month to serve the additional load. Would require us to update our load forecast and schedules for purchasing with Cal ISO, which is totally feasible. So it's something that we're excited to look at into the future. Next slide, please. So this is one of the options that we have. We have a 4.6 megawatt natural gas-fired cogen plant, and we could expand that. We could add another one. We're kind of hoping that we could possibly disperse 2 other options, being smaller CHPs at the government center, which is about 1.5 miles away from the other cogen. So we're looking at and evaluating both those options and going to bring them to membership to discuss and look at how we can harden our microgrid functionality. Next slide, please. We're looking at on-site large-scale solar. We do have a limited land base, as I stated earlier. We are in construction of a 1 megawatt solar garage right now, and looking at how that's going to work for us, evaluating it. It's something that we're excited about, and we'll be able to report back further information when we gather real data. We're also going to look at other smaller solar projects on government buildings, as well as parking lot areas that we can use. As was mentioned earlier, it gets really hot here, so shaded parking wouldn't be something that folks would be upset about. We would actually benefit multifold from parking structures. Next slide, please. And residential energy efficiency is always something that we are encouraging our residents and our customers to evaluate and incentivize them to be as energy efficient as they can. So we are looking at using a rate structure to be able to incentivize our folks, as well as building guidelines as people build new houses to think through their energy profile and demand before they build. So that's something that we're ongoing with different departments within Pechanga. So we're definitely looking, and we'd like to test the likelihood of success for such a program. The grant effort sought to perform energy efficiency audits. We did get 10 residential homes, and one thing that we learned to take away from this is we had a great variation of housing types and housing demand on the reservation. So we went from anywhere from very little demand that was pretty much year-round flat to huge demand for larger houses with ACs that were keeping houses cool, which may have been multi-storied or built in a way that it is not as easy to cool. So we did realize, and we had to go, it was tough for us to get these residential audits as there was privacy concerns and people were not as open to us coming inside of houses, and we had to really, I was new too, so I mean, I've been here 3 years, and I think it helped me learn to be patient and try to build a rapport as the general manager of the utility to gain those types of relationships. But one thing that we learned was for folks that are looking to do these types of residential audits to definitely consider the privacy matter interest of residents and work with them and meet them where they're at. I think as we grew in this project, we did end up learning a lot about our residents and how they use power and what they want and what types of planning goes into how they set up their residential areas. So it was something to definitely put some thought into if you do take this as a path going forward. We're looking at free light bulbs just to really kind of to start that conversation of how we can lower residential demand and subsidize energy efficient appliances. A free or subsidized energy efficient building materials program is something that we're pushing right now, and individual measures to be considered on a case-by-case basis. So we do actually talk to a lot of folks individually and give them advice and guidance, as well as try and hook them up with resources of folks who are building energy efficient styles of housing. Next slide, please. On the demand side, we're definitely looking at grid connected solar, off grid with battery backup, community solar, passive solar, shade cooling, solar heating, cooling, geothermal ground source. We can see the options for offering services identified as website information, net metering for PWE customers, tribal funding, residential energy reviews, need-based programs, programs for new structures, energy service businesses, and regulate SCE's program, and partnerships. So kind of all of the above types of options. We did, and this is something that I did hear mentioned earlier on the previous presentation, is kind of land questions of ownership, as well as if you have fee land or land that has different statuses within the reservation, it definitely poses some questions. So we were fortunate to be able to work with Tweety and the team and others at DOE to get an extension of time under the grant to do this additional work. And we had to assess where the existing SCE rights of ways has been completed. And I will just add that this was something that was unanticipated, and it's really interesting when you get into these land questions on reservations. And so I would advise folks that are engaging in this type of determination of how you're going to move forward to really not ignore or don't let this kind of get in the way later on, that it's a fundamental piece to start. You can't start too soon. It's something that is going to take more time than I think most folks are recognizing up front. So it was very helpful for us to be able to get this done.
Pardon the interruption. You have 5 minutes remaining.
Okay. So with the rest of the slides here, I think we can move through pretty fast, as we already discussed that we're looking at community solar going forward. We don't have a ton of land, so we have to really evaluate where that's at and look at the options that we have with the land base that we have under our ability to develop or build on. Next slide, please. So our next step is complete the community solar study and then present two options to general membership for their decisions, and really see where the leadership and membership as a unit would like to go. Next slide, please. Yeah. Thank you all for the time, and I look forward to listening to the other presentations or the questions that we have coming up. I believe I might be the last one.
Thank you so much, Peter. That was great, and we look forward to the report and the results of the work that you're working on. I want to thank you as well as Josh and Robert, for your willingness to share your project, your stories with us today. I will pass my virtual mic here over to James Jensen. James is a contractor to the office, and besides being a fantastic project monitor on some of your projects, he has also been very instrumental in bringing our monthly webinars for many years now. James will moderate the questions that have come in, and I will step out and let you have the mic, James.
Thank you, Tweety. You're too kind. We do have some good questions here, and I imagine we'll have time for some more. So to the audience, please submit any questions you have. But with that, let's jump into our questions. The first one here is related to our first presentation, the microgrid with San Pasqual band, and that's on the battery side. How much cycling of the batteries do you expect, and what is the expected lifespan under that operation?
Thank you for the question. So first of all, the expected lifespan, in California, I think it's pretty standard and even required if you're seeking battery rebates, that the batteries have a minimum of a 10-year warranty. We're talking about lithium-ion, but I think if other storage solutions want to get rebate funding, they're required to have a 10-year warranty minimum. The expectation is it'll last up to 15 years, and that's subject to cycling. There is a certain amount of cycling. I think it's 150 times or so per year that needs to occur in order to actually receive the rebate. So it'll be cycled at minimum that amount of time, and then it'll be cycled as needed beyond that, just for the to optimize economics in terms of energy arbitrage and peak shaving.
Great, thank you, Josh. Excuse me. As a follow-up to that, do you have any feel for the energy arbitrage opportunities and the demand charge reduction opportunities, and how close they would come to paying up the battery without the other benefits that the battery is providing?
That is a good question. I mean, I think that's in this case, we have not necessarily isolated the batteries. I mean, the economic modeling, which I don't necessarily have in front of me, is dependent upon the solar as well. So solar being oversized to meet about almost 110% of the current load, although there's some electric vehicle chargers that are being installed as well. I didn't mention that before because it's outside the scope of the DOE grant funding. So that's going to just depend on probably what's the variance between what you're paying in peak and off peak is, and then also what level of demand charges are you paying. If you're paying significant demand charges, then I think the batteries are going to have a better payback period. In terms of energy arbitrage, one consideration too is there is some losses of electricity, about 5% in cycling. So but the most like energy tool based and other software solutions should be able to take your electric load and project what those savings would be for just energy storage.
Thanks, Josh. We'll probably come back to you with more questions, but I've got one here for Robert on the Ho-Chuk project. Can you elaborate a little bit or let us know your experience after these projects have been built? Has the perspective or the point of view in the community changed on solar in any way? Like, is there more support? Is there eager for additional solar projects? And have you experienced any vandalism or outside of the semi trucks backing into them, which was probably not deliberate, on any of the ground mount systems? Robert, you might be on mute. Or you might not be on anymore. Let's move on. We'll see if we can get Robert on a little later. Okay. For the microgrid project, heading back to you, Josh, did you consider any, or did the band consider any third-party commissioning, or kind of third-party quality assurance on the project?
Thank you, James. Another great question. There's kind of different layers of that. The code compliance group SKIL was brought in for some quality assurance in terms of compliance with building codes. Our role is at least remotely quality assurance as well, and to also review and provide feedback on both the testing and commissioning plans and the testing and commissioning results. So that's as of right now the extent of it. Obviously, if we see any issues, we may possibly bring some more resources or go a bit further into it. So it is considered and is happening to a certain degree.
Great, thanks, Josh. A question for PETA here, and maybe Josh, you can chime in on as well. But can you elaborate on the public safety power shutoffs? Like, what is the process? How much time in advance are you given to prepare for those? And what is the impact then on the community during those shutoffs?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. There is a process that is being developed right now for notification of PSPS shutoffs. Generally, they're triggering off of each utility has an in-house weather forecasting group, and each utility has its own sort of triggers that they're looking for. So SDG&E to the south of us, San Diego Gas and Electric, has a quite extensive weather forecasting group that we were about to tour, and then the COVID hit, and so I was really excited. I'm kind of like a weather nerd and really wanted to go check out their system as they've heavily invested in it. And SCE has, Southern Cal Edison also has something. And so basically the process is they see weather coming, and then they start a notification process that generally reaches out to each account holder within the area of impact, and it sends automated emails. I believe the requirement is 72 hours. Once you make, we call it the naughty list, you're on the we might shut you down list, and you're not wanting to be on that. So we're watching it like a hawk on the website of the utility. Basically, you can see the circuit. So you have to know what circuit you're on. That's something I'd put out there, is to kind of get an understanding of what the name of the circuit is. If you're in California, find the name of the circuit that feeds your accounts. And then from there, you basically watch the degrees of danger, and eventually they'll give you an imminent warning. So it's kind of frustrating because you can get a flood of emails that are a bit confusing if you have multiple accounts. So basically we see those coming in, and we know from our utility, we also have a weather station, and we're watching and looking at what the local conditions are for us, for PWE. And so basically we're all getting ready at the same time. But once it does happen and they're shutting the circuits down, it's an indefinite sort of shutdown. So there's no like real solid idea of when it's going to done. So basically they have to wait for, they as in the SCE or PG&E or SDG&E have to wait for the wind event or the heat event to be over. And then once it's over, they have to bring out, and this is the problematic part, is that they have to bring out personnel to physically inspect the lines before they re-energize. And so that's where it can be really frustrating for the community to have the wind stop. You're basically a normal day and your power's still out. And so folks, the frustration is warranted. And as the weather's over and you're wondering why your power's not on, well, basically the utility only has so many trouble folks that can come out and patrol those lines. And so you're kind of in the queue depending on how widespread that shutdown was. If they have 5, 10, 15 circuits to inspect and they only have 5 inspectors, well, you can be, we actually had that happen here where the wind was done for a while, and then, finally we got power back on. And so it impacts the community in a major way. I mean, from spoilage of freezers, to having school, the kids that are tele school that are working at home, their internet can go out, and so it was quite disruptive. And I know our relatives down south were going through a similar situation, so I would I'll let the folks out there chime in as well, Josh.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Yeah, so I mean, I think you explained it, very well. Most of my experience is in SDG&E territory, and indirectly, the tribes themselves and their representatives are usually the ones being directly communicated about the specific PSPS outage events. I definitely, I've seen an improvement in terms of how much notification they give in advance. I know earlier on, a few years ago, I think as late as recently as 2018, then there's some major ones that occurred with no advance warning, which were incredibly disruptive. But in terms of impact, I mean, we're talking about shutting down entire governments and government facilities. You have homes that are now losing power if they don't have backup, either generators or storage, and some of it just depends on what's the weather at the time. Fortunately, the more recent ones have occurred when it hasn't been that hot. But if you're talking about a heat wave, then that's pretty significant to then lose your air conditioning during that time. And then tribes, including Pechanga with gaming operations, if they don't or other economic operations that are extremely significant, and if they don't have sufficient backup power to have to shut down close their doors, that can be having to shut down for a day or more is a major economic impact in addition to all the impacts on the community directly in terms of health and safety. I guess another thing I'd add too is somebody who's on medical devices as well. I mean, there's the impact of the heat, potential impact of the heat, but if somebody's on medical devices too and they don't have backup power, that could be life-threatening.
So if I could chime in and add that the recent PSPS shutdowns that were faced in our area, the tribal utility actually maintained our electricity service to all of our customers. So we didn't see any interruption in our economic activity or our residential activity or our government activity. So we had sufficient backup. We had our generation, and we were able to maintain that power flow. But the other residents that were on the FCE circuit were not able to. So it was one of those interesting pieces where a part of our area was in an outage, but our critical facilities were up. So that was pretty nice actually to have all of our government and our shelter and anything, economics and gas station, everything was going. So as we were disrupted, we were able to basically maintain our electric customers to be able to provide some stability in an uncertain outage. So we were fortunate and maintained our power services to our folks and customers.
And other tribes around were jealous. That's the driver behind these projects.
Well, we look forward to working with you all. I think we're a united front here, so let's follow up and see the kind of cooperation that we could look to do as it seems like you guys are learning and we're learning. We look forward to further communication.
That sounds good, Peter. We'll do.
Yeah. Following up on the discussion on the public safety power shutoffs and their impacts, it seems like with San Pasqual's coming microgrid, there'll be potentially an evolving situation. And so how easy will it be to adjust the operation of the microgrid to the what the locals utility, I don't remember if it's SDG&E or who it is, or PG&E, but the prevalence of their public safety power shutoffs or other just market dynamics within the utility industry. How easy will it be to update the operation of the microgrid, i.e. change set points and that sort of thing to adjust for the market conditions?
I think a lot of it just is more of monitoring changes to the rate schedules for these, for this particular microgrid, and we are, I guess, in this project, there is an ongoing O&M agreement that's tied to the performance guarantees with the through Green Realities, but really it's going to be Gridscape who's going to continue to operate it, and so we're going to be relying upon them to be making adjustments as appropriate to ensure economically that it's going to maximize cost savings. In terms of working with the utilities and SDG&E, they've been they have a newer tribal liaison who's been great, Jennifer Summers, to work with, and they've been supportive in pursuing these projects. And then California has a whole microgrids proceeding with the California Public Utilities Commission that's seeking to streamline and make these projects more efficient. They really see this as a huge need out there that they want to try to facilitate as well. But kind of answer your question went a little beyond. Thanks, James, and thanks whoever asked that question.
Thanks, Josh. A question back to PETA. As you're wrapping up your studies, what's kind of the timeline to move forward with physical projects? Do you have any idea what the next steps are there?
So we are moving forward with a solar project as we speak. So that is coming along. We would have been much further along into it sans COVID. So as everybody's had their sort of normalcy shaken up, we've changed some timelines on some of our in the pipeline projects. In terms of looking over and evaluating expansion of our residential footprint, I think it's coming pretty quick. I mean, we've gathered data, and thanks to DOE's support for us to be able to fully kind of study and look at all of the nitty-gritty questions of what it's like to expand. Without this support, it would have been very difficult to be able to do such a thorough job. So, I want to take some time to congratulate and thank the folks who you guys have all put in a ton of work. And from the last time that we met in Denver, everybody from the top down and the staff and sideways and horizontal has been very supportive and just appreciate it. So we are, I think, to the point of starting to really go to the membership with some options. And I could see that happening very shortly as these PSPS shutdowns, as I said, they impacted a lot of the residents directly, even though our residents, Pechanga Western Electric residents were taken care of with electricity, others weren't. And so now, it's the conversation is rapidly increasing and coming our way to look at what further expansion would look like.
Thanks, PETA, and thanks for the compliment to our office. We're certainly pleased to hear that working with us has been fruitful and
oh, definitely. You guys have gone above and beyond my emails late at night, or kind of just, it's been such a trying event in this year. With having a utility at this time frame has been difficult, and you guys have gone above and beyond. So hats off and thank you wholeheartedly from Pechanga Western Electric and on behalf of our folks here that are looking at further expansion and happy to be where we're at currently. So just thank you. Can't thank you enough.
I'll second that.
Thank you both. And I shouldn't really speak for the office, but I'm sure Lozano would appreciate those comments and be pleased that we're providing good service. Last question here. Back to you, Josh. I'm trying to find it again. We had a lot of questions come in. Oh, here it is. What's the percent of or do you expect to fully serve your emergency load with the microgrid once it's operational, or will you have limitations on how you operate those facilities? And then I'll just throw a second question in that you can quickly respond to: is how many companies bid on the EPC for the microgrid?
Great questions. So I think the separate question was asked by Margie. I think the highest peak we saw was 140, but a typical 140 kW. But a more typical peak is about 110. The system is sized. The backup propane generator is 150 kW. So that alone is sized enough to serve the whole facility, and then the solar plus storage should be able to as well, independently, if there's enough sun shining at the moment and enough charge in the battery. So not only should we be able to serve the load, but we can have redundancy beyond for that. In addition, there will be some load shedding that will likely occur, and when the outage occurs, just to ensure the duration of that supply is extended as much as possible. Is only limited propane, and then you can't rely upon the sun to keep recharging the batteries either. So then the other question regarding the procurement and the number of bidders. So we held a site walk, and we had a lot of people, probably 20 different companies show up to the site walk, and then ultimately we only had, I guess, 3 responses. One was kind of a, almost response like, we'll do an open book approach with you, and they didn't actually give us anything of substance to work with. And then, a second group came in extremely high, and so, we ended up settling on Green Realities, and did like we were going to possibly send out back to bid, but we felt comfortable in proceeding there. But I think the kind of thing that scared a lot of people off was just the complexity in terms of tying all the facilities together. So these are complex projects. Microgrids are relatively new, and it was unfortunate we get as many. Separately, I'm working on larger projects that are getting a lot more responsiveness.
Gotcha. Thanks, Josh and Peter, for all your questions. That's it. I'll throw it back to Lizana for closing. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I got to run. Take care.
And thank you both for your kind words. With our small group, we so try to respond to everybody timely, but there's so few of us, so it's good to hear. Thank you so much. And thank you for all of our presenters today for this session. Really appreciate it. I think there was some good dialogue, good questions. Microgrid seemed to be of an interest, and I think as weather, climate changes, fires, California shutoffs, etc., there seems to be, at least my personal opinion, a greater interest in Indian country and sort of being self-generating and self-sufficient. So it's on the rise. Okay. So thank you, James, and thank you again to the presenters. Thank you all for listening in. We really appreciate it. This concludes this session of the program review. The next session will start at 1:10. And if you're attending the next session, you will have to join using the link and the call-in number you got for that registration for the next session. Thanks again. This concludes the session of the virtual program review. Goodbye.